The consumer advocacy group's calling for a different way to measure on-time performance for the MBTA's rapid transit lines. To share an idea for grading the trains and rider experience is a staff attorney for MassPurg, Matt Casale. Thank you very much for being with us, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, most of us who use the T fairly often, we use it in a window of maybe 1 or 2 hours a day, but this is a service that runs something like 20 hours a day. So there must be a difference between what most of us experience and what the T gets for its numbers.
Yeah, I think there probably is a little bit, but when you're looking at the subway reliability, the first thing you want to think about is, those couple of hours that everybody's riding it a day. And that's sort of where the rider's experience starts and ends for by and large part. But then when you're looking at measuring reliability, if you're not really taking into all of that into account, you're not taking into those times of overcrowding and sort of the excess trip times that it takes during the rush hour and when these people are really experiencing it, then you come up with a number that doesn't ring true to the daily rider.
Well, the T has a number that looks pretty positive. Explain that number, and it's supposed to do something about rider experience, isn't it?
It is, and in fact, that's something we give the T credit for, is that they're looking for a more rider experience metric. But what this measures is simply the platform wait time. So the time between when someone gets on the platform and the train comes. And what they're setting as sort of the outside goal is the headway, or the time between trains. So if there's a 5-minute headway and a particular passenger waits 3 minutes for the train, that's counted as reliable. Now, it sounds good, and it is good in some ways, but it's incomplete because it doesn't take into account the fact that some people wait 3 minutes for a train that's already 3 minutes late, depending on when they get into the station. And so these trains that are late, technically not adhering to the headway schedules, are being counted as reliable. The other problem, and it's a big problem, is that some people get on the train after waiting 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It's counted as reliable. Then down the line, the train gets delayed. Their trip ends up being in excess of 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, longer than it should have been, and yet that ride is still counted as reliable for them, when that customer or that rider isn't going to see that ride as reliable.
Well, you've looked at how these things are measured in some other cities. Talk about some of the other ways that might be better for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So what the London system is really seen as the industry standard, and they use a system called excess journey time, which takes into account just that, the excess time that someone spends on the train over and above that which they would have spent on the train if there were no delays. And it does take into account platform wait time, so that is part of it, but it's not the entire picture. So it's how long they wait on the platform, then once they get on the train, how long it takes them to get to their destination, and if it's over and above that which it should take them based on the schedule or the headway, then that is, the reliability rating takes a hit there. In our system, that doesn't happen.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Matt Casale from MassPurg. Matt, what about what it takes to put a better measure into place? I mean, there must be some technology, some expense involved in that?
Yeah, there's certainly some technology involved. There's some math involved. They'll need to develop a good working formula for getting these numbers. I will say that the T has been working with MIT and UMass Amherst already and worked with them to sort of develop what they have now. I think that is a good relationship that can continue. And I think the other part of it is the data collection part. And a lot of the data that's needed to do a sort of more comprehensive system is some of the data that's already being collected by the T, whether it be actual on-time performance, whether it be adherence to headways. So if a train's not meeting its headway, you know how far behind it is, and then whether it be when people are entering the station, which is what they're measuring now. The T also has a method for, even though we don't have tap out in Boston, meaning people don't have to tap their cards to get out of the system, so you don't have that perfect measurement of when someone comes in and when someone comes out. The T already has a way for estimating that, and they do put that in their annual the MassDOT annual performance report, which is called the tracker, but it's not taken into account in the public reliability metric that's on the performance dashboard. So there's definitely some expense involved in developing a new system. There's definitely some things that need to be done, but a lot of it can be done with what we already have.
We already know very well that a lot of the delays in the T are because of old trains, which are being replaced over the next few years, and infrastructure problems, which are also gradually being addressed. So why is it so important to know more about how well these things are running?
Yeah, well, we like to say we can't fix what we're not measuring, and so there absolutely are these issues. But if we're not getting an accurate measurement of how the system is actually running, we don't really know how these issues are really affecting ridership or really affecting the level of service. So knowing to really good detailed measure how reliable our service is really helps us know what we need to fix. Again, you can't fix what you're not measuring.
Of course, another thing that you could be measuring here is how much time is lost from the economy because people are stuck between here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about that a lot with traffic, about how we know how many hours average person in Massachusetts spends in traffic per year. I think a similar measurement to how many hours people spend stuck on the T could really help and show us what this actually is affecting and how it actually affects not only people's everyday lives but companies and profits and how well the city is running.
Of course, the other thing is that historically, MassPurge has been an advocate for more investment in public transportation. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
So could those metrics help with that mission, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another thing I want to sort of impress is that the purpose of this report is not to just pile on the T and say the T is doing this wrong and we should all be upset with the T because they're doing this wrong. It is in furtherance of that goal of getting more investment for the T, which, as you said, we've been advocating for years. We think a thriving MBTA is a really important part of our city and our Commonwealth. And knowing what's wrong, knowing what needs to be fixed, really helps us say, okay, here's where the money needs to go. Here's where the greater investment needs to be. Let's fix it and let's make it better. We want to work with the T, the city, and everybody to make that happen.
Well, I'm tempted to stretch your imagination a little bit. What about buses? Can't we do something more to find out what, at least to track those problems and see what to do about them?
Yeah, that is sort of maybe something that we hope is on the horizon for us is doing some similar work with buses. Buses have some issues that the subway, at least the heavy rail, doesn't have, and that's they get stuck in traffic. So it's a lot harder to maintain sort of a steady schedule. When you look at the dashboard reliability, bus reliability is closer to in the 60%, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that buses get stuck in traffic and have a much harder time staying on schedule. But people really rely on buses, and we need the buses to be more reliable as well. And there are a lot of things that we can do to sort of help that along, whether it be pre-boarding fare collection or all-door boarding or dedicated bus lanes or transit signal priority, things like that to get buses moving along. And then I think if you do a lot of those things, you'll start to see the bus reliability numbers going up.
We should mention, if people want to get some more details about what MassPurge is doing, especially in transportation, you've got a website they can check out?
Yeah, absolutely. It's www.masspurg.org.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Matt Casale from MassPurge.